Alright, everybody, peace. Welcome to the GSMC College Football Podcast show, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As you guys know, I'm your host, Sean Cottle, and wow, what an exciting weekend of college football that we had. I mean, where to even begin? I mean, we've got Colorado and Colorado State. We've got the dysfunction going down in Alabama. And really, the whole SEC, is the SEC in trouble right now? I mean, what is going on in SEC land? What is going on? And I mean, what an exciting weekend for college football. And that this past weekend of college football, it completely encapsulates why people love college football and why it's one of, if not the most popular sport in America. I mean, this is why some people love it more than the NFL, because of this past weekend right here. That's exactly why. And we're just gonna get right into it. We're gonna cover the LSU Mississippi State matchup towards the end of the show, and we're gonna cover the matchup between Tennessee and Florida, and also we're gonna discuss what's going down in Alabama. But to start off the show, we're gonna talk about the game of the year so far with Colorado State, a game that most people didn't expect to be as close as it was. But before we get started, though, guys, if you haven't already, be sure to click that like, subscribe button so you stay up to date on all of our latest content. And be sure to follow us on Patreon as well. You can do so by going to patreon.com, clicking on the search bar, and typing in GSMC Sports Network. That way you can gain access to all of our exclusive content that we post daily. And if you'd like to support our network and our company, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Once again, it's streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. None of this is possible without you guys, the fans, and we're just so grateful for all of the love and the support that you guys show us. And it's just such an honor to have this platform and to share with you guys my knowledge and my insight on the world of college football. And it's amazing to hear your guys' thoughts as well in the comment section. So just let me know what you guys think while we discuss each of these topics as well. So that being said, let's get right into it, guys. The game of the year so far, Colorado State. Wow, it took double overtime for Colorado to pull out a 43-35 victory over Colorado State at home in Boulder. My goodness, what a matchup. Colorado got up by as much as 18. Wow, Colorado led by Shedeur Sanders on the final drive, tied it up with a 2-point conversion. In overtime, they managed to get a game-sealing interception, and I mean, my goodness, this is a game that had the fireworks, man. We know all of the press and media coverage this game was getting due to some comments that Colorado State head coach Jay Norvell made about Deion Sanders, or more so about him, but and this is a game that had Travis Hunter get injured by Colorado State safety. I forgot the brother's name, but Travis Hunter got hurt towards the end of the first half, and actually has a lacerated liver based on my reports, and will be out for 3 to 4 weeks. But clearly that didn't stop Shedeur Sanders, who went 38 for 47 with 348 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Though Colorado didn't have much of a rushing attack, they were led by Dylan Edwards, who had 10 carries for 57 yards. Like I said, the receiving corps, Xavier Weaver had a touchdown, 98 yards. Michael Harrison had 76 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jimmy Horn had 7 receptions, 66 yards, and a touchdown to tie the game in regulation. And it was a wow. I mean, like I said, this is why you watch college football right here. And though, like I said, a lot of people, myself included, didn't expect this game to be particularly close. we see that Colorado State is actually a pretty good team. They're not ranked in the top 25. They lost a close game, their first game of the year against against Washington State. I'm sorry. We saw Washington State was able to do to Wisconsin. So they were a formidable opponent, and wow, I mean they came to play, and though their quarterback Nicolisi had 3 interceptions, also had 3 touchdowns. But I was really impressed with Torrey Horton, man, of the receiver from Colorado State. I mean, if he doesn't look like a prototypical receiver, I mean, 6'2", 6'3", extremely long. He made an unbelievable catch in the third quarter, I want to say, tiptoeing down the sideline, and it was just phenomenal. I mean, that might have been the best catch I had seen all year, but up to that point. But gosh, this game just had so much to unpack. And I mean, let me know what you guys think. What was the best part about this Colorado State game? What was the biggest takeaway for you guys? For me, this game showed me that Shedeur Sanders is an elite level quarterback. No doubt about it. I've seen enough film. I've seen enough to make a decision. Shedeur Sanders is elite, and he can play at the next level. No question about it. I also have seen that the offensive line is they're just undersized at Colorado, and I don't know what schemes you can run to hide that. They're just undersized, and that physicality is gonna play a factor. Obviously, gonna play a huge factor, especially with their matchup against Oregon coming up this week. But the secondary for Colorado is still quite good, and honestly, it makes up for a lot of the deficiencies that are in the front seven. And this is what we talked about before. Just the interior for the offensive line and the defensive line for Colorado. That's where they struggle, just because they're undersized. But the skill position players at Colorado are just so talented. I mean, my goodness. Shiloh Sanders played an amazing game as well. I believe he had an interception, return for a touchdown. He had 7 tackles. He played phenomenal as well, especially late in the later stretches of that game. It's just Colorado's impressive, especially with their skilled players, and it's just amazing the turnaround. We talked about yesterday. This is what happens when you change culture and you focus on culture, and not necessarily winning games. This is the outcomes you get, and but Colorado will struggle. They will struggle because they can't generate a lot of pressure on the defensive side, and they can't contain pressure on the offensive side. So, the fact that Shedeur was able to do all this with a weak offensive line is just even more impressive. And I mean, this team these skill players are legit. Shedeur Sanders is legit, but they're going to struggle. I just don't know what their ceiling is and how good they can really be with their weak offensive line and defensive line that they have. But this matchup against Oregon this upcoming week will say a lot. But man, what a game. What an exciting game in Colorado. And I mean, it was a star-studded event. I mean, they had basketball players, musicians there, other football players, NFL players. I mean, my goodness, what a game. It was exciting, and it is incredible to see the impact that one program is having on one man, Deion Sanders, having on college football. And another impressive thing that I saw was his coaching methods, Deion's coaching methods, and how especially with the kids from today's generation respond to this style of coaching. The days of coaches being in your face and yelling at you and really being vocal and not necessarily volatile, but volatile to players on the sideline after a mistake, those are gone. And we see that Deion was more consoling to his players and speaking with them on the sideline when they would make a mistake, and that's what players are gravitating. That's what players gravitate more towards today. And Deion has shown a great job of adjusting and knowing his players and knowing the dynamic that young players like to be coached in today, and he's doing a great job of adjusting to that. that was also an amazing thing to see. But wow, what a game, guys! What a game. But guys, one game that's a little less exciting and but still manages to develop a lot of questions for us is what's the matchup between Alabama and USF and what exactly is going on in Alabama. Guys, we're gonna cover all of that and then some in our next segment. So be sure to stick around. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. In case you missed our first segment, we talked about the dynamic matchup between Colorado and Colorado State and why that was the best game of the year so far, and how that is a perfect representation of why people love college football and why college football is one of the most popular sports, if not the most popular sport in America. And stick around, guys, for later on the show where we cover some SEC action. And in this segment, guys, we're going to be discussing what's going on in Alabama. We're going to use the Alabama South Florida matchup as a backdrop for that. And before we get started, though, guys, if you haven't already, be sure to click that subscribe, that like button as well. Stay up to date on all the latest content that we post. Be sure to subscribe to us on Patreon as well. You can do so by going to patreon.com. Click on the search bar and typing in GSMC Sports Network so you can get access to all of our exclusive content that we post daily. And if you'd like to support our network or our company, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Once again, it's streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. None of this is possible without you guys as fans, and we're just so grateful for all the love and support that you guys show us by tuning into our shows. It's an honor and it's grateful, and we are grateful, and I'm grateful as well. But with that being said, let's get right into it, guys. So, wow, what is wrong? What is going on with Alabama right now? So, as you guys know, Alabama struggled offensively against South Florida. They ended up winning by a score of 17-3. The quarterback situation is what's most prominent in Alabama right now. As you guys know, Tyler Buckner got the start against South Florida. We covered that on our previous show. However, Alabama would eventually end up benching Buckner and bringing in Ty Simpson, who himself struggled as well. And so the quarterback issue is what's most prominent in Alabama right now. And I said that these were issues that can be fixed, and these are fixable issues, particularly with the offensive line. There's schemes you can run to kind of max that. The secondary is solid, is good, much better than people expected them to be. But if you listen, I'll never forget the old saying I learned is that if you have more than one starting quarterback, you have no quarterback. Or if you have a quarterback battle, then everyone dies, meaning that you have no quarterback, and which means you have no team. And this is why stuff like this needs to be addressed in the preseason. But we talked about. I did talk about how if you're going to make a change, you have to make it right away, and you can't go back to who you originally had of being Jalen Milroe. Not because Jalen Milroe isn't the better quarterback, but because you're losing the locker room in the sense that now players are starting to question your decision making because you're starting to question your decision making yourself. And that's where Alabama's at. That's where Nick Saban is at. But I don't necessarily want to put the blame on. I'm not trying to deflect blame from Nick Saban in this moment right here. But Tommy Rees has to take a lot of flack for this as well. I mean, Tommy Rees coming from Notre Dame, bringing in Tyler Buckner. First of all, there's a reason. And forgive me for not even speaking on this last week, but there's a reason that Buckner transferred from Notre Dame. He was a starter, but it says a lot for a quarterback that has to transfer, right? Like if he's not even the starter at his previous school, and he transfers because he wasn't going to win the position at Notre Dame. Why is it now all of a sudden a thought that he can win the starting position here at Alabama? And the reason he came was because Tommy Rees, his offensive coordinator, left and went and came here. But how often do you see that? How often do you see a quarterback leave a school because the coordinator left. Not because the head coach left, but because the offensive coordinator left, especially the quarterback position. How often do you see that? You rarely ever see that. And, if you're Nick Saban, you've seen enough of Tyler Buchner. He can go somewhere else and play. But also you've seen enough of almost of Tommy Rees, But I know Nick Saban is sold on, he loves Tommy Rees and he loves the potential of Tommy Rees, but sometimes we have to accept people for what they are and not what they can be. We've seen that Tommy Rees has shown the inability to create packages that paint his whatever quarterback is in a positive light. And he does a poor job of developing good packages for specific players, and particularly Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson, and so a lot of I'm not deflecting blame from Nick Saban, but Tommy Rees does have to take quite a bit of flack for this, but this issue has to be fixed right away, and right now it's just, and from what I've been hearing, they didn't like what they saw out of Ty Simpson as well, and right now they're even clamoring possibly for the freshman, the fourth string quarterback who's a freshman to get some reps in, but. I watched the game. I saw enough from Tyler Buchner, and I saw enough from Ty Simpson as well. And I still believe Jalen Milroe is the best quarterback on that team, and it was premature to bench him and to pull him. But the more dysfunction you have at the quarterback position, the more dysfunction your team is going to have. And that's the one position where it has to be stable. It has to be stable no matter what. And it's reflecting in Alabama. It's reflecting in their performance. So, Nick Saban is going to have to adjust this right away. And he's got to make a decision, if not by today, by tomorrow at the latest, because whoever you stick with is going to be a quarterback for the rest of the season. Because I've seen enough of Simpson. I've seen enough of Buchner. Anyway. So it's got to, if he goes back with Milroe, he has to stick with Milroe. He has to trust Milroe, but Rees has to create packages that are conducive for Milroe's skill set. Same way how Lane Kiffin, when Jalen Hurts was a freshman, he completely developed a brand new package and offensive set that was conducive to Jalen Hurts' game, where he had quite developed as the passer he is now. So they had a lot more RPOs and run packages for Hurts. Designed quarterback runs, and the offense didn't look pretty, but it was efficient, it was effective, and they made it to the national championship. And same way with Tommy Rees, he has to make those adjustments, but man, and then people have also discussed about, is it the mindset of the players now in Alabama? And I have one former and professional football player talk to me and say that the guys in Alabama are no longer playing for the pride of Alabama, but more so now for NIL money and the money now. And so that's why it's hard for players, our coaches, to even connect or get through to players, because players aren't concerned about winning and holding that standard of Alabama football. They're just worried about getting their NIL money. And he says that's the biggest issue in Alabama right now, not the quarterback position. And he says this has been an issue in Alabama since NIL has become a thing. And that's why you see they haven't won a championship since 2020. And it's interesting for him to say that. I believe that is part of the issue. I don't think that's the biggest issue, but him saying that, because he sees it from a different lens. He's played professional football, so he's able to see the nuance of it. So I trust what he says, and that's something to look into. The attitude, the approach to the mental side of football from these players. And that's something to think about or to keep in mind moving forward as we analyze and view these games. But this quarterback issue has to be addressed right away if you're Alabama. But with that being said, guys, we're going to cover another interesting matchup from the SEC, and that's Tennessee and Florida. Is Florida back? Is Florida football officially back? I know we've been kind of ripping on Florida since the season started, but man, they have turned things around from what it looks like. But Guys, we're going to cover all that in our next segment, so be sure to stick around. We will be right back. Alright, everybody, welcome back. In case you missed the first two segments of our show, we covered the dynamic matchup between Colorado and Colorado State and how that game right there is a perfect representation of why people love college football and why college football is one of the most, or if not the most popular sport in America. The excitement, the tailgating, the fan commitment, it's non for real, and something you can't quite get anywhere else. So we're gonna cover. It's exciting. It's wonderful to be able to cover all of this, cover college football as it is. But now we're gonna start covering some SEC matchups, SEC games over the week, and in our last segment we're going to talk about LSU, Mississippi State. But with this segment right here, I want to talk about Tennessee and Florida, and what this game represents for the SEC East. I know throughout since the season started, we talked about how Florida's in a rebuilding class and how they're starting to rebuild their culture and their program. So we shouldn't expect too much out of them. But man, this match they showed that they might be a year or two early with the way these guys played against Tennessee. I mean, they completely shut down the offense of Tennessee, limiting them to just 9 points in the second half. Joe Milton of Tennessee went 20 of 34 with 287 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. And the Florida offense wasn't particularly much better, but Graham Mertz went 19-24, 166 yards and a touchdown. But the rushing attack of Florida was tremendous. Trevor Etienne had 23 carries, 172 yards and a touchdown, and Montrell Johnson Jr. had 12 carries, 23 yards and a touchdown. So because Florida did a great job of running the ball, they did a great job of controlling the clock and controlling the time of possession, which limited scoring opportunities for Tennessee, which means that Tennessee was never able to really get in a rhythm. You could tell they looked flustered with the number of false starts and flags they generated on offense. And Florida was also able to generate a lot of pressure on the defensive side of the ball. They only had 1 sack. They had a lot of pressures, a lot of QB rushes, and it was honestly more so great Florida as opposed to poor play on the side of Tennessee. And this was interesting to watch, because what does this mean for the SEC in terms of the teams that we thought would be great? We talk about the LSUs and the Alabamas and the Georgia. Georgia, another team that struggled last week against South Carolina. Though that's the team I'm least worried about, because that was more so a matter of just being so dominant for so long, and then you just have a mental lapse. But they still managed to win the game. But this right here, man, and yes, this game was in Florida, but Tennessee they look out of sorts on the offensive end, and the interior struggled. Surprisingly, a team that normally is able to generate a lot of pressure inside, they weren't able to generate a lot of pressure, and they weren't able to stop the run with their linebackers. And they just weren't able to get Florida's offense off the field, and Florida was in no rush to score the ball. They were fully committed to the run, because that's their bread and butter, and Florida's game plan, which is control the clock and run the ball, and you want to win the game that way. That's what they did, and it worked for them. But let me know what you guys think as well. What did you guys see from this game? What was your guys' biggest takeaways from this Florida-Tennessee matchup? Was this more good Florida, or was this more bad Tennessee? And is Florida now, should they be considered one of the top teams in the SEC? And how far should Tennessee fall after losing this game? I don't want to read too much into this, but I think it's more so Florida is much better than we expected them to be, as opposed to Tennessee being just not as good as we thought. I think Tennessee still is a good team, but I think this shows there is more talent than we thought in the SEC, and it's not as top heavy as we thought it once was. But moving forward, Tennessee will have to do a much better job of creating pressure on the interior, specifically with their linebackers. And they're going to have to get much more productivity out of their rushing attack from Jalen Wright and Jabari Small, because 63 yards and 35 yards aren't going to cut it. Total 100 yards rushing, that's not going to cut it. Because teams are starting to hone in on the passing attack of Tennessee. They're just starting to drop back in coverage because they say, listen, we know you can't run the ball, so let's just, throw in an extra nickel on for the secondary because we're not worried about you running the ball. So that is what Tennessee is going to have to fix moving forward. In Florida, they're going to have to show more diversity in terms of their offense and being able to pass the ball when necessary, because that's something that they struggled with. And that's what they're going to have to fix moving forward. But I think this is more so a matter of good Florida as opposed to bad Tennessee. But still, interesting representation of where the SEC is moving, nonetheless. So it'll be exciting to see moving forward how that goes. But, guys, yeah, so that's my takeaways from Tennessee, Florida. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. But with that being said, in our final segment of the show today, guys, we're going to be covering LSU at Mississippi State. Jaden Daniels, is he back in a Heisman conversation after his performance? We're going to be covering all of that and then some, guys, so be sure to stick around. You are not going to miss it. All right, welcome back. In case you missed the first segments of our show, we talked about the dynamic matchup between Colorado and Colorado State, and how that matchup and how that game is a perfect representation for why college football is one of, if not the most popular sport in America. And we also covered the matchup between Alabama and USF, and we talked about what exactly is going on inside of Alabama's program and how their biggest issue, or the issue they have, is the biggest issue that any team can have, and that's issues at the quarterback position. And so they have issues that need to be addressed right away. We also covered the matchup between Florida and Tennessee, and what that means for Tennessee moving forward, and what that also means for Florida moving forward, and how our expectations of Florida might have been a little lower than they should have been, but perhaps more talent top to bottom in the SEC than we thought. But though the SEC is, for all intents and purposes, is struggling right now, and and there are some things that need to be addressed, but moving forward, we'll discuss all those things. But in this matchup, in this segment right here, I just want to cover the matchup between LSU and Mississippi State, but really because I want to talk about the amazing performance that Jaden Daniels had against them. I mean, this is a guy who we just discussed about last week when I put out my way too early Heisman list. I had him dropping out of that list because of his performance against Florida State, but now with the way in which they performed against Mississippi State, it's possible now that we can bring Jaden Daniels back into this Heisman contention, Heisman talk. But I want to know what you guys think as well. What do you guys think about Jaden Daniels' performance against Mississippi State? Is he a legitimate Heisman candidate? I want to know all of that. But he went 30 of 34, 361 yards, 2 touchdowns, to go along with 15 carries and 64 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. And yes, I know this is a Mississippi State team that defensively has struggled so far throughout the season, but still a great opponent nonetheless. And Jaden Daniels looked much more poised and under control and in control of the offense than he did against Florida State. And so perhaps more so it's just a matter of him finding his rhythm, finding his groove. And we got to remember that Jaden Daniels last year also struggled early on in the season and then started to catch his groove, and especially during the Alabama game, he really started to pick up his stride and started to play better, and vault to the Heisman contention last year as well. And same thing goes for this year. It looks like LSU offensively, they start out a little slow first couple weeks, but maybe they're starting to find their rhythm now. Maybe they're starting to find their groove and get comfortable. But what an amazing performance from Jaden Daniels, and also the defense of LSU. This is a team that is going to struggle because they don't have a lot of experience coming back, especially on their front seven. But did a great job today of limiting Mississippi State to 94 yards on the ground. And secondary is I don't think, me personally, I think the secondary is pretty good at LSU. I know they're a little young, but I think the secondary is better than their front seven. I'm much more concerned about the front seven of LSU because they lack so much experience, and teams have shown it so far. Even specifically Florida State has shown that teams, if they can commit to the run, that they'll be able to run all over LSU. But like I said, LSU did a great job of controlling the trenches, especially on the defensive end in this game, which obviously just made it easier for the secondary as well. But LSU is finally played a game and played up to the expectations that people had for them coming into the season. So coming in, continuing in the conference play, it will be very interesting to see how they trend upward or if they plateau here. But it's very interesting to watch moving forward. But Jaden Daniels' performance, like I said, is the biggest takeaway from this match, from this game. I was so impressed with his performance. And don't be surprised, he might pop back up into my way too early Heisman list. Who knows? We'll see, especially with what's going on in, like I said, with Alabama and Oregon. But, this is a great performance by Jaden Daniels. And it's making the Heisman, way too early Heisman list it's making it interesting now. Maybe we'll have to add in another slot. Maybe we'll have to do a 5-man list instead of a 4-man. But, Jaden Daniels is definitely making it interesting so far. But, tomorrow I do want to cover what exactly the state is of the SEC and what's going on in the SEC. A lot of teams are struggling, and there's been, Vanderbilt even lost yesterday to UNLV. There's just a lot going on in the SEC right now, and a lot of teams are underperforming. And what does that mean for the SEC? Is the SEC even the best? Are they even a top 2 conference now in the country? And I'm just probing the question. I don't know what you guys think, but is the SEC a top 2 conference now? Let me know what you guys think. And we'll cover that later in the week. But with that being said, guys, that's all we have for our show today. What an amazing show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And if you haven't already, be sure to click that subscribe button, hit that like button as well, so you guys can stay up to date on all of our latest content. Be sure to follow us on Patreon as well. You can do so by going to patreon.com, clicking on the search bar, and typing in GSMC Sports Network, so you can get access to all of our exclusive content that we post daily. And if you'd like to support our network and our company, you can do so by following the ticker and the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network/tip. Once again, it's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network/tip. None of this is possible without you guys, the fans. So we're just so grateful for all the support and love that you show us by tuning in. And it's an honor to share with you guys my insight on the world of college football. And if you haven't already, be sure to tune into the GSMC Baseball Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, and the GSMC NFL Podcast as well. All of our hosts provide great insight and coverage on the sports that they cover, and they are some of the best in the business, and it's an honor and pleasure to be working alongside them. But that being said, guys, we'll be back again same time tomorrow at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Until then, continue to stay safe, be vigilant, make smart decisions, and until next time, guys, peace.